is almost there. Soon. We will start then now. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this Liquidware webinar together with Computacenter. My name is Martijn Steki, and I'm your host today. And I get the pleasure to have a special guest today with us, Cliff Mann with Computacenter. Cliff has been for the last 13 years with Computacenter. In the last 10 years of the 13, is the practice lead at Computacenter. So we will go through this together with Andreas, of course, Andreas from our side. We will go through this webinar, the future-proofing application management. So using FlexApp, Liquidware FlexApp to manage hybrid environments. So that's the topic we will discuss today. But before we move on, I'd just like to introduce our special guest. Like I said, Cliff. Cliff, maybe you want to tell who you are, what you do, and yeah, why you're here today. That's also important.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I work for Computacenter, as you say. So from a company point of view, obviously the details of the company are on the screen, but really what I do within the company is I look after our BDI practice predominantly. I also run a team that we have Windows consultants, architects. So if within our consultancy practice, we deal with large enterprise customers. And my speciality over the last probably 20 years has been specifically application delivery, VDI deployment as it's become, and working with customers in complex environments to make sure that not only delivery of Windows desktops or whatever that desktop looks like, the application delivery is right. As a company, we obviously deal in a large enterprise space, and obviously we always work in every environment to the end goal is that the customer needs are met and that the requirements of the end users are the primary thing that we focus on. So it's a very large company. There are a lot of other areas, but my specific area is consultancy services and advising people on what we do in this space.
Great. Thanks again for taking the time, for being
Pleasure.
Here today with us. And also, during this session, you will share together with Andreas some of your experiences with, the hybrid environment that we live now in, right? I think I was early this week in at an event in UK, the EUC forum, and I still heard again, this is the year of VDI, right? Before COVID, there were some folks asking, is this going to be the year of VDI, or is that going to be the year of VDI? But I think COVID showed us that this is going to be the era of hybrid working. So just another housekeeping, obviously you all have been muted, and questions are important for today. So if you have any questions, use the question Q&A chat box to get us in. So Andreas is our next speaker obviously is Andreas. Some of folks know you. You're with us for the last 3 years. So Andreas, go ahead.
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Obviously, I think Cliff and I share same sort of history. I think I've now been in the EUC space for a little over 25 years, but not always as a IT consultant. So that gives me sometimes a different perspective on things, and also gives me some other angles perhaps now and again in how I perceive things. But at the end of the day, we at Liquidware obviously always put our customer and the end user within the customer front and center. That's basically everything we've done ever since we started, I think back in 2009. And it's in our DNA as a company. At the end of the day, we develop software to help our customers. And today we are obviously going to be talking about the topic of application management, application lifecycle management. And what I've found over the past 3 years, and I've noticed this before when I was still at Citrix, is that whenever you start talking to a manager or somebody who's responsible for the workspace and you ask them about their top 3 concerns, most of the times what I'm getting back is security, user satisfaction, and cost. Not always in that order, but it's most of the time it's these three topics. Whereas what I've seen is that at the end of the day, a lot of times application lifecycle management basically touches on all three of these, but it's never front and center. The amount of times I've walked into a customer and found applications which I thought would have been out of order 5 to 10 years ago were still actively being used using either old school technology or even worse, outdated platforms. And why am I saying this is because when we look at the research being done around security, if you look back on 2023, we see that 8 out of the top 10 data breaches were related to application attack surfaces. So using known or lesser known issues, but always on the application layer. So I think over the past 2 decades, we've been very good at building our firewalls and building the outer perimeter, but we're forgetting that at the end of the day, we need to let in users to use applications, and that's where a lot of our vulnerabilities lie. And I don't even want to think about the financial impact for a lot of organizations, but it's also about the reputational damage as a result of the fact that you've been breached. And this is not just your mom and pop shops. This hits everybody just the same. I think it's just that the bigger brands obviously become better well known. So from a security perspective, having your application lifecycle management, your application delivery up to date, secure is paramount. But also from a user experience perspective, right? I think over the last months, and well, to be quite frank, I joined Liquidware coming out of this perspective as well, is in, hey, Liquidware, next to your FlexApp technology, you also have a user experience monitoring solution. This is something I've always seen be a challenge for companies. But why do applications matter as well? It's very simple. Users want to make use of the latest technology and don't want to be looking at outdated platforms. But as a business, relying on outdated software also opens up all kinds of areas in which we should actually be concerned whether or not we can adapt to the latest legislation or to the latest functionality. Can we actually be competitive enough using outdated software? And in my mind, it should always be, obviously, the answer is, if you ask any consultant, it depends. But I think when we're looking at software, this shouldn't be a it depends type of scenario. There's a reason why the vendor of your platform has developed a new release. And I found it rarely outside of CVEs that a release notes of a software would say, oh yeah, we've plugged 10 different security holes. They will typically call it, we've plugged some bugs. We've squashed some bugs inside of this scenario. Whereas those bugs might well be security breaches, but they would also be enhancements that further the user satisfaction, quality of life improvements, as I like to call them. And as I said, right, I'm in the EUC business now for a little over 25 years, but I started that life not out as an IT consultant, but actually as an accountant. So numbers to me mean a lot. And I've done some of the math for some of our customers, but also just looking at the scenario. And I've looked at, hey, if we got application lifecycle management really up to date, we can see almost 45% cost savings, even if we're just having one type of delivery. So either be it a virtual desktop or a physical laptop. If it's only one, it's already 45%. If we start adding in a second, we can see cost savings up to 80% just on how we deal and manage with application updates. That is not even looking at the security side of the house, right? The fact that you're able to quickly adapt to a new update and be able to deploy that within 24 hours if need be, because there's a big CVE, is massive for an organization. So what is this FlexApp? Why are customers actually choosing it? Why are we spending it, and we being me, Cliff, Morteza, time and asking you to actually pay attention? Why are customers choosing FlexApp? So I've gone back to all of the engagements I've had in the past year, and I've said, well, first of all, it's the fact that they are all of a sudden now able to have a dynamic application management, simplifying base operating system images or OS deploys, being able to say across the estate, we're just going to grab one base image, and based on every individual user or user groups, we are able to actually assign them the applications that they need, rather than building the so manyth golden image. It can now be one base image, which holds the base configuration for the whole company, and then tune it to whichever use case which is out there. And what they love is the fact that what FlexApp is doing is it is not forcing them into a certain architecture. Even yesterday, I had a conversation with the customer because he was hearing my story. I thought, yeah, but can it still run within my own data center? I said, if you want to, yes. We will not require you to move into cloud. But if you want to embrace cloud, the product is already done and ready for it. It's just your pace, your choice, moving forward as to what is it I require on the front end? What is it my users will be using? Whereas in the back end, we've consolidated everything into a simplified packaging, a simplified storage solution. But simplified in this case doesn't mean not powerful enough to support all of this. No, it is as powerful that you can actually say, hey, you know what? Today I have this desktop delivery strategy, but I'm getting fed up, or I need an additional use case. And I'll just add it while I migrate my apps, because the technology allows me to do so by separating the application from its underlying operating system level, but even delivery mechanism. It is as deployable as possible. And that brings me immediately into my second reason why a lot of our customers choose Liquidware FlexApp, is our high compatibility ratio. And this is always the big thing. I don't want to have a gazillion type of packages. Yesterday, I was talking to the customer, the same customer, and he was saying, sometimes we have to package an app in 3 or 4 different ways. One to be delivered into environment A, then into environment B. And that means that every update, rather than having to do the update once, they have to do it 3 or 4 times. And every individual scenario makes sense if you just isolated your focus to that one specific deployment scenario. But that's not what we do. We say, you know what, you package once and you decide where it needs to land. There's no need to repackage it. You can actually make that package even be customized by division. So for instance, if you have, like, say, let's say an SAP GUI distributed over 3 countries, you can have each country have their own configuration, even though you've only packaged the SAP GUI once. By just leveraging the advanced, powerful features within the product, you are able to actually reduce the amount of effort needed to go into building the package, but having the ultimate flexibility. And that kind of shows also, if we look at the adoption we're seeing in the past 12 months from some major players in the industry. At the start of this year, we announced to the market, for instance, that Citrix now natively within their management console allows Citrix customers to assign FlexApps to workloads. Having seen that, and Microsoft actually knocked on the door before as well and said, you know what, we want to expand our app attach approach. We want to drop the whole MSIX app attach naming. We just want to call it app attach. And we want you to be on board as one of the first partners for us to bring that to market. So within an Azure Virtual Desktop scenario, you can now actually choose FlexApps as being your app attach technology without needing to go into the management plane. From a Liquidware perspective, you can just do that natively inside of AVD. and leverage the power of our application layering technology. So rather than traditionally pushing something into the AVD and then after delivery executed, mounted, now it actually happens across the Azure backplane. Everything happens the moment you log in, the apps will be there. The moment the user launches an application can show up. And this is to enhance what we already did from our side by allowing people that want to go the Intune route as their software distribution method of choice to actually include FlexApps in there as well. And we've done tremendous work with customers and partners to actually show this and show them the value of being able to quickly and easily deliver applications, but also replace them with updates without polluting the underlying operating system, because everything related to the application remains within the layer. The only thing that actually ends up on the device itself permanently is any user preferences, any settings the user might do within an application. And the fact that application layering offers me a non-persistent but fully transparent and fully functional application experience, that's what drives customers towards FlexApps. Another thing we have is our click-to-layer technology. Click-to-layer means, yes, the application is there, but you know what? It only shows up if we are actually using it. Until the moment the user either clicks on a file that requires that FlexApp or launches the FlexApp by means of a shortcut, that's when we dynamically add it into the running system. And that gives us the scenario that we now all of a sudden have three choices to make. Do we actually want to add applications while the machine is booting up? So basically installing it system-wide, but also offering cloaking. So even though perhaps, let's say we are in a Windows 11 multi-user scenario, user A logs on, he has about 10 applications, then user B2 logs on, but he doesn't have all of those 10 applications, maybe only 8. The 2 he's not entitled to, he will not see. They will be completely hidden from him, but they are there. The operating system has those files, our AV sees them, everything else sees it except for the user because he's just not entitled. We're hiding it from them, we're cloaking it from them. Step 2 is, okay, we have the base configuration, then the user logs on. He might have a few additional applications assigned to him as well. That's where we will mount those. And last but not least, the on-demand feature, the click-to-layer functionality to give the user those apps, but not have him pay the penalty unless he actually uses them. And like I said, that technology to be able to cloak it from a user, even though it's actually there, also applies to multi-user environment. And that's not just limited to an RDS type of scenario, but it's also applicable to the more recent developments around multi-user Windows 10 and Windows 11. Fully giving the user the experience, he is getting a personalized desktop with only the apps he's entitled to, without the frustration and the management overhead of giving everybody a persistent desktop, and thereby also reducing the cost of such a scenario. And whether that is on a virtual environment, or let's say things I'm seeing more and more often, and things I didn't even know were actual rather than just some marketing speech, shared devices. I'm seeing a lot of customers that actually just have a ton of laptops lying at the entrance, and when people walk in and it's their shift, they grab one off the shelf. That machine has already been provisioned, but by the time they log in, they only see the apps they are entitled to, even though there might be 10 other apps already installed or deployed to that machine using Intune or whichever other software technology used. It's there, but you're only seeing what you're entitled to use. Now, somewhere, I think about 3-4 years ago, we introduced a second terminology into the market. We called it FlexApp 1. And up until then, life was easy for our customers. They knew by then they knew the word FlexApp, and all of a sudden it becomes in FlexApp 1. So what's the difference? Well, FlexApp basically requires your agent, our agent. FlexApp 1 doesn't. FlexApp 1 is basically a fully portable format. And then we realized giving you that fully portable format that could run without any form of management, because I could basically just send a FlexApp 1 to anyone and they should be able to then run the application within. What we thought was we need to add a few more security layers on that specific format. First of all, we need to be able to digitally sign the executable. It's an executable at the end of the day. And I think every enterprise will have some security measures in place in which they say an executable being run on the endpoint needs to be digitally signed by these, and these vendors. Sometimes it could be your own PKI, and that's obviously what we offer. We offer you the possibility to sign those executables with your own PKI. But we thought one step further ahead. What if somebody just copies it over? Their machine doesn't care about the digital signature because they own that machine. But they might have just copied over an application with sensitive information included within that application FlexApp 1 package. So what we did was, okay, we want to add in an additional layer. So we've built in OAuth validation, which basically means that you're tying that executable, that FlexApp 1, back into your Entra ID as a web application. So as an organization, you can then all of a sudden say, wherever the user is, wherever they are on the globe, whatever type of machine they're using, if they want to get access to the application and therefore the information contained within that FlexApp 1, they need to authenticate themselves and using Microsoft enhanced authentication mechanism. So if you've enabled multi-factor authentication on top of just having a username and password, we will honor that as well. And thereby making sure that even, I dare to say, beyond the grave type of approach, so even if it's a malicious copy from by somebody of that FlexApp 1 onto their own device, we still have control on our data. And that is, in short, what I've learned in the past 12 months, 18 months. I'm not even going back even further because then we needed more time. And I was asked just to do a little quote unquote introduction into FlexApp. Why customers are choosing FlexApp. So with that, I hand it over back into Mortez.
Absolutely. Thanks, Andreas. You know, I always say, once I give this guy the mic, I can go have coffee, dinner, and breakfast, and he still can talk. So I'm happy you gave the mic back to me. Cliff, listening to Andreas, listening to what Andreas has said, what you know, before we get to a question Q&A, it was interesting to hear your view, to understand, okay, how did Computacenter do it before, and why now? You know, why did you guys partner with Liquidware, and how would you see this? You know, the changing landscape we're going now through. It's good to hear your story as well.
Yeah. So there's a couple of driving factors here, isn't there? So firstly, as you mentioned, COVID kind of changed some of this space a little bit and accelerated a lot of the let's move to a virtual or a DR kind of scenario for our desktops, which a lot of organizations hadn't really thought about, but suddenly they've got laptops locked in buildings or desktops. So that accelerated a lot of movement to virtual desktops and how they would do it. The second thing that's happening that we're seeing a lot is obviously Windows 11 is coming, which is probably going to drive some application management requirement and changes and underlying features. So Andreas obviously speaks a lot about the simplicity of FlexApp. So the simplicity is good for us because obviously we're adding a layer on. So as a VDI practice, we've got a long history in this space. So delivering the desktop is easy, delivering the applications, and whether that desktop is Citrix, Omnissa, AVD with Nerdio, we largely aren't too worried about which technologies we go with in that space because we're fairly agnostic in there. But the FlexApp piece enables a little bit, well, quite a lot more flexibility about particularly that on-demand stuff, and can we remove it quicker? And some of the traditional application packaging doesn't quite give you some of those finer details of the ability to remove. And scaling is important, because suddenly if you've got an event that you need to be able to deliver, not only a desktop, because a desktop without the applications is fairly pointless, but if we've modernized that application estate, we can deliver those applications quicker into desktops. I mean, it's largely spinning up a Windows desktop, whether that's, you know, whichever VDI vendor of choice or cloud of choice is largely the easy part. So
if you look at you know, the broader landscape, right? I think if you look at the last couple of years, it's been quite disruptive in the industry, right? Look at the changes we have seen with VMware, Citrix, and the speed that Microsoft is making with the AVD. What's your view on that? And when you look at the app management side as well, so the traditional way and the modernization way.
Taking the two parts of that question, because I think they are a little bit probably separated, and I guess that's the whole point, right? Separation of apps from desktops is largely a good thing, because that allows you some form of abstraction. In the VDI space, it has been, it's been very much change, and various, you know, things have happened to maybe drive a more adoption of a certain vendor, or maybe change to a different vendor. So there's a lot of moving parts in this, and I think our sweet spot is then talking to customers and helping them understand the best choice, not just now, but for the next 2 year, 3 year, because these environments aren't generally a throwaway investment. They're more of a longer term strategy piece that we like to talk about. So I think the VDI market, if you want to term it the VDI market, I would argue it's just another delivery of Windows, but we can term it the VDI market. Has been challenging, I think, and I think it's good that there's so much innovation in this space, because I think Microsoft has done a very good job of innovating and driving this forward. In terms of the applications, I think the application piece is also changing a little bit, because traditional packaging, and let's be honest, we will always put whatever the requirement is. So whatever the vendor choice is, it's the customer's end requirement that is the important piece. Whatever the application delivery mechanism, it's the customer's end choice, and customers the best for their current scenario. But I think, you know, packaging applications once across form factors is very appealing, because, as Andreas said, you can have an application that you've got to deliver to a Windows device physically, you've got to deliver to a VDI package in a Citrix environment, and you've maybe got to deliver it to another VDI package. So that simplification and packaging reduction is very appealing to customers.
Andreas,
I also think, and that's been my experience working with some of your experts out of your team, Cliff, is packaging used to be a specialist's job, right? To be able to actually build a software package that you could deploy would require a lot of attention. And I think actually on day one, when we first met and we did the whole workshop, I could already see people being able to package simple applications, obviously, but actually without having any prior proper packaging experience, they were quickly able to at least package 50-60% of an application landscape. And I've only seen that percentage grow in a short period of time for a lot of them. And I think that what speaks to a lot of our customer base as well is the simplicity with which we deliver. And I'm not even going down the route and talking about the automation pieces we have available as well. It's just being able to quickly pick up, either convert current old school AV packages into FlexApps, but also be able to quickly and easily just follow the installation guidelines and have the packaging solution within FlexApp do all of the heavy lifting without them actually needing to understand what is going on in the back end to get to the package. And I think that's been a part of our success as well.
Cliff, one question for you, because I was meeting a large customer in the federal government yesterday. And the question this gentleman asked his packages was how many hours it takes you guys to package an application. And the number they gave was around, give or take, 40 hours. And they asked the question, this manager asked Andreas the question, how many hours will it take with you guys? It was more or less an hour. How do you, because we come sometimes, Clifford, don't get me wrong, we come sometimes in a situation that when we talk to technical folks, it's today Thanksgiving Day, right? Happy Thanksgiving. It's like talking to the turkey about the Thanksgiving dinner, right? How do you look at it, right? It's sometimes it's the the technology companies or the partners like yours would like to package more, right? But with this particular product, you will be more flexible, more productive. I would like to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a packaging expert, so I don't want to say the packaging is easy. So, because I'm sure there are complex packages, and Andreas' response of an hour is, 40 days against an hour is probably a little optimistic, I guess. But it's Andreas, right? He's a legend at this. But in terms of running a VDI sort of practice predominantly, this product is easy enough or simple enough for those consultants that have traditionally, let's be honest, have worked in application publishing package rather than packaging. So it's easy enough for them to then pick this product up and take out, I don't know, a percentage, a fair percentage of current apps and go, yes, we can deliver this as a package, we can deploy it as a package, and that is a lot simpler. Obviously the more complex packaging, I guess, is where you would need some expertise in that space. But certainly for a large percentage, it is simple enough for your traditional VDI consultants and architects to do themselves. I mean, I can package in this, so that's an indication that it is simple because I can do it, right? So I think that is a fair point. And we have run numbers as well with customers where they've got hundreds of applications, and the time to deliver that application is drastically reduced using this against what you would call traditional packaging.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's what our message is as well, right? It's not that we think. My experience with IT is, there's tons of projects, tons of tasks that need to be done, and there's so little resources. So with this, we could kill some repetitive tasks, right? We could automate some stuff. We could make sure that the resources are being used in a proper way. Andreas, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think obviously, right? I'm a FlexApp expert, so even a tough application is not so tough for me. But I sometimes get challenged. And an hour, maybe it's optimistic for the most complex, multi-layered type of application. But the fact that like Morteza said, that we are able to take away, let's say the 80%, the 80-20 rule. If we are able to take away 80% of the work and only have to spend serious time on the 20%, but not all of a sudden still consume 100% of the time, but actually reduce that as well, and being able to automate things. I've never heard a VDI project to be done within the originally assigned time. There's always leftover stuff that still needed to be done. And if not, maybe we've built it initially, but the maintenance over time. I mean, I've worked with customers that spent, in my mind, a fortune on the initial packaging process, but then it's the gift that keeps on giving, having to redo and respend all of that money every time there's a new update. Whereas obviously when we can take away a lot of those by using our FlexApp package automation to do all of the repetitive work, help them transition away from their SCCM by turning any SCCM software package automatically into a FlexApp, and then, I don't know, onboard it into Intune, if that's really the way we want to move. While at the same time, I'm onboarding Windows 365 or a Citrix estate without having to still maintain a gold image. The amount of money that can be saved. That's how I also came to those numbers earlier on. It's not just that it's shorter time period, it's the repetitive work, it's the overall time to maintain such an environment. And this is obviously where I always say this is where the architect meets the operator, right? The architect can design something perfectly, But he needs to take into consideration that at the end of the project, he hands it over to the guys actually doing the day-to-day maintaining such an environment. And that's why I love FlexApp as much, because it is a quickly and easy to understand. There's nothing funny. Any management tooling will still report the app as being there rather than it living in some sort of isolated tunnel, bubble, container, whatever. No, it's there. You can see it. You can almost touch it. Sorry, I'll give it back to you, Morthijs, because I know
No,
else will
great.
run out of time.
No worries. We would like to stop at 45. So, but just before we go to questions which are coming in, I just want to have one more question for both of you: is which or what particular vertical in industry will benefit from the capabilities of FlexApp, but also the joint, partnership between Computacenter and Liquidware? Tell me.
I don't know whether there's a specific, you have to be sat in a specific vertical to gain the benefit. I mean, I would put it against use case really. Again, if it's a use case that you've got to have, particularly applications updated in a fast moving environment, then this lends to that. I mean, obviously things like frontline workers, those sorts of environments where you've got connections that need constant updating, perhaps, to that application is an area. But I'm not sure. For me, there's a let's lock it into one specific vertical. But I'm sure Andreas will have a different opinion and take.
Yeah, I think obviously whenever we do events or webinars like this, people always think, oh yeah, well, I need to be an enterprise, and Andreas is showing a 5,000 seat environment, and that's not me, I'm much smaller. And I can tell you, look, I think the biggest customer we have is about 200,000 users using FlexApp, but the smallest one is about 200. It all, as Cliff is saying, depends on the use case. Recently, I had a customer that said, I'm not big, but I have one app that I really need to deploy and I can't do it using traditional means. Can you please help me? And obviously we can help. At the end of the day, it is, Morthijs, like you also say to a customer, it all depends on how much pain do I feel? And then we can look at, okay, what would be a price point? But if the issue is big enough, I mean, customers, I find, don't really care at the end of the day. If you really solve a business threatening problem for them, they were happy to engage with us. So I don't think that we are really typically pigeonholed into a certain vertical or industry or size.
Great, thank you both. The questions coming in. Just let's see which one of you can answer this. Andreas, I think that's a question for you. Can FlexApp capabilities scale for organizations with complex multi-cloud strategies?
Yeah, so yes, it can. That's a short answer, because, and I think the only thing we really require is a storage, and the platform, although I keep referring to it as simple, doesn't mean it's not powerful. I have customers that have a multitude of using Azure as well as Amazon S3 buckets, as well as still having on-prem storage. And the work we've done with some of our joint customers, we've even actually done math in does it make sense to move packages if the users in the US and we've built them here in the UK, do I really need to get another storage location over in the US? And then it then became apparent, for some it is, and for others it doesn't. And then again, still, the way we deliver them, does it impact them? So yes, we can do multi-cloud, we can do on the back end as well as on the front end. I have customers that are transitioning from one technology over to the other, while also have virtualized or DaaS type of scenarios that also still have physical devices. And basically that one package they've built can be deployed to all three at the same time without rework. So yes, the answer is yes.
Oh, great. That's a long answer. Right. Now, anyway, Cliff, Michael has a question for you, and he says, why FlexApp? Why not business as usual? Why not continuing with the traditional packaging?
So we obviously, again, depends on customer requirement, right? So we still, we're not saying here let's move everything to FlexApp. We're going to look at the use cases and define that as it is. But why FlexApp for me is fairly simple. There will be scenarios where packaging is the right approach, but FlexApp offers us a lot more in terms of granularity, I guess, is a word we've not really said. But if we've got a complex environment across multiple countries, we need to be able to mask those apps, or we need to be able to deliver them and update them very quickly. FlexApp adds that. And we can't really achieve that with traditional packaging as such. And we also, the time to deliver the app is crucial as well in some scenarios. So a large percentage of our customers use Intune for delivery, and sometimes the timescale of that isn't quite where we need it to be. So we would add into that. So why FlexApp? Because it's a piece of the puzzle that answers some specific elements within delivery and management of those apps. Is it going to be FlexApp on every VDI deployment we do? We do a lot of VDI deployments. We do a large amount of Windows deployments. So the answer is probably it's not going to be for every single scenario, but it adds specifics into our portfolio that I don't see where we get anywhere else. And so the answer is that's why we would use FlexApp in scenarios.
Thanks, Cliff. So Mark is asking a question, and that is, how does this FlexApp complement AVD or Intune? Andreas, maybe you can elaborate on that.
Well, I think Cliff partially answered that already, right? What we're seeing in real life scenarios is that Intune just isn't agile enough to deliver apps at the moment we need them. Being able to then have a secondary mechanism still under full control and full integration with our management platform, but being able to deliver applications basically on the spot, right? When the user logs in, we immediately add them into their environment with an application compatibility of 90% plus, right? So even just looking at that percentage and comparing that to some alternatives, the only thing better is indeed natively installing it using a silent install, but that can take up to 72 hours if you're not careful, or asking the user to pull every application from a company portal type of scenario, which could still be a FlexApp at the end of the day. So having that versatility, being able to quickly adapt to changing circumstances. And just picture this, right? We have a very important application, and all of a sudden a major CVE comes out. The CISO will be down breathing in your neck to quickly and fast update that application. You don't have 72 hours. You need something that can basically say, it's done, it's packaged, here you go. Within an hour, everybody has been switched over, and the old one has been pulled from production the moment he says it needs to be pulled from production. You don't have to wait until Intune finally decides to give that command back into your client.
Thanks,
Andreas. The other thing there, Andreas, as well, I'll just add into that is going back to the year of VDI, which has been probably for the last 10 years. You're also getting closer to the year of VDI was the Nirvana base image, no apps, gold image across your platforms. FlexApp does help with that. I mean, I'm not suggesting again that we're going to end up with a single gold image across a 20,000 seat environment, but that FlexApp piece does get you a little bit closer to having less gold images, which if you're in a cloud platform, you're paying for all that storage, and so it does reduce that as well and simplify that.
Great. There are more questions coming in. I just want to finalize this webinar with one last question. Andreas, I see Peter sending a message and a question. I was last week at Ignite, and there was an announcement. I think you mentioned it, but it's been writing it. There was an announcement around you guys together with AVD. Can you explain it a bit more? I guess you explained it in one of your slides, but can you?
Yes. Yeah, sure. So what has happened is that from day one, Microsoft was trying to convince customers that app attach, dynamically adding a virtual disk containing an application to an AVD was the best way forward. Basically comparing it to the way they do profile disk, or the way we do profile disk. The problem Microsoft had was that their app compatibility for the technology they had chosen wasn't up to, well, enterprise standards. Let's call it. Let's put it that way. So they basically said, you know what, we're going to open up, and that's where Liquidware was basically invited. I'm not saying back, but politely invited to participate in getting that, to coming on board and allowing FlexApp to now be assigned through the AVD management plane, while having the management server, the whole infrastructure the way it was, but without an AVD admin needing to go into a Liquidware management console to assign. So it's now become a single pane of glass in which you can basically assign FlexApps into your AVD the way you originally envisioned that as well.
Great. I think, since I promised everyone that I will stop at 12:45, it's been now 12:47. There are questions coming in. Those questions, I promise, we will answer. Our marketing will send the answers. So for now, I'd just like to thank again Cliff for your time, for being here with us, sharing your ideas and your view. Thanks, Andreas. Same for you. As always, it was great to have you on this webinar. Today is Thanksgiving Day. Our colleagues in States are celebrating Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. Because of that, we always, my marketing manager came this morning to me. We always promise to put the recording the same day on our YouTube channel, but because of Thanksgiving, we will do this on Monday, so just bear with us. For now, I'd like to thank you all, and if you have more questions, don't, and you have been shy in this session to send us your question, no problem. Send us an email and we will get back to you. Thanks a lot and see you next time. Cheers.